One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.
Troy Kirby is the director of ticket operations at UC Davis, but he's also pretty popular for a long-time podcast series that he's done. And Troy, is it appropriate to also call you one of the founders of the National Association of Athletic Ticket Sales and Operations, NAATSO? Were you one of the founders of this organization?
It was really a passion project of about 3 other people and myself that got this off the ground. But I'll take founder.
I do want to start by asking about the founding story of NAATSO, which of course falls under the NACTA umbrella these days and is just a couple of years old. But can you take us back to the initial conversations? And you mentioned there were a couple of other people who saw this as a passion project. And obviously, you guys have done a lot of good work to get it to where it is today. But take us back to day one, if you will, and let's start from there.
Jason Martin, who's at Arkansas State, had been trying to get one course at NACMA for tickets. I was trying to get another one, and Carrie Neville at Cleveland State was trying to do one as well. So the 3 of us trying to do something on tickets under the NACMA umbrella. We had met the last few years under really a breakout session type of model that had been going on long before I had even shown up. One of the earlier ones, we were actually in the Dallas hotel this year where it actually had been one of the starts, and that was with Adam Haycop as well as Jesse Martin at Oklahoma State, who had really organized something to where we would just find a room that was available. 75 of us would crowd in. I think Mark Washoe would bring a cooler of beer. We kind of joked about that. But essentially just talk about ticket issues. And as it had grown the last few years to 2014, we'd become more and more hopeful that there was enough people that wanted to be a part of this. And when NACMA said, hey, we just don't have the room for it, we started to go forward with the idea of how can we start something that will actually foster and, build into its own thing. And I called up NACTA, who is supportive. They wanted to know more of what we wanted to do. And so I filled out the paperwork, and I probably cost NACTA a lot of money simply because I filed it through the state of California, where I am in Sacramento. And the myriad of rules that are in the state of California are apparently much worse than the state of Ohio. So they're still dealing with some of those things. But we now have one of the best organizations, I would say, at least fastest affiliated organizations for membership in 2 years. We have over 316 members. I was more worried that, when it started, we weren't going to be able to kind of justify it right away because you're getting into a late start process, as well as the fact that you're getting into a process to where it's beyond people's budgets. People haven't scheduled for them. Usually budgets happen in January. We were starting in September of that next year in order to get as close as we could to a good membership. And we had 210 people that signed up that first year. So I was pleasantly surprised. We had about 100 and some attendees that first year and enjoyed everything down in Orlando. And then we said, what can we do for year 2? And we got up to 316. And I think we got probably about 150 attendees to sign up and, for the actual conference, which is a great model to have. And I'm excited to see where Carrie Neville, picks up the tiara, as we call it, and moves it to the next step as she's now president. I think that that's really what NAATSO was all about, which was trying to be not about the title, but about how do we carry this entire thing forward. Ticket sales generally in college athletics is not necessarily, I feel, viewed on with the proper respect that it deserves. If you go to the pros, everybody in the pros that are at the top, or just about everybody, starts in ticket sales. They have to. They have to know how the customer gets there, etc. It's not necessarily the same in college athletics, and the problem with that is you have other organizations who have had plenty of time to tell their stories, and sometimes they tell stories which I would say are probably inaccurate, which is that they're selling the tickets and the ticket people are kind of just off to the side. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. And I think that, everybody has an equal share into what they're doing. I'm not deriding what marketing is doing or deriding what, development is doing. But at the same time, the idea has been, well, ticket people really don't do this or ticket people don't really care. I just don't think ticket people have been facilitated. So when we actually started, NAATSO, it was amazing how many people came to our events and, wanted to participate. We actually had a lot of carryover from NAD and ACMA people that were interested. Of course, one of the best things that's happened is we've had a lot of great speakers who, honestly, I don't think have had, the chance to speak about ticketing, even though they're athletic directors, even though they're, people in upper administration. Tom Bowen was one of our first major ADs to sit down last year, and then Greg Byrne this year. I think that's a fascinating thing, to get in front of the right people to be able to say, here's what we do. This is great, and you need to know this, and, how do we get better at this? And really, that's the question that kind of fosters from all of it. We've had a great response from sponsors. I think we've locked in probably about well over $100K a year in sponsorship. And I think that's from the efforts of sponsors knowing that we will go the extra mile because, ticket people are very transactional in some ways. And some of those are actually good, benefits to have with us. When we, deal with sponsors, we also tweet out and have all of our attendees tweet out, hey, thank you for being a sponsor. We go the extra mile with all that. And I think that that's important because it really shows that we want to make sure that they get as much ROI or value back. If you talk to a ticket person, it's all about ROI.
Yeah, and speaking of ROI, in the last handful of years, within this niche of the industry, we've seen a number of departments go to a third-party provider for ticket sales, whether it be IMG Learfield or Aspire or one of the other players. The introduction of variable pricing, of dynamic pricing. What are we going to see, in your estimation, in the next 1 to 3 years in terms of how this piece of the industry evolves from a sales standpoint?
Well, I think first off, I want to clarify that NAATSO, has various people from the third parties. Bernie Mullen from the Aspire Group was actually our keynote last year. Our biggest kind of advocacy is also bridging that gap to where if we have ticket managers or people that are on site who work for the university that actually goes third party with most of its outbound sales, that those two can work together. And I think that that's important as well, to see people as equals. I don't see it as a bad thing. I actually see it as a benefit. Rob Sine, who's the president of IMG Learfield, been one of my better friends that I've had in this industry for a long time. I've known him since 2007 when he came up when I was a young ticket person at Seattle U and kept hounding me with hope is not a strategy. So, I think that where it's going is we're trying to catch up to the pro model. And I think data is going to be the next big thing that's going to come out of this. You're seeing the Aspire Group take it seriously. And data, not just in the sense of we just crunch a few numbers and put CRM involved, but also how do we set triggers to any type of response rate that we get? How do we make sure that any type of email that's sent out, how do we make sure that any type of group code that's sent out is generated with a portion of information that can be built back into an overall system of who the customer is? And this actually should be something that development officers really want to know about. When somebody buys a ticket, a lot of times they kind of go into, I guess, a black hole a little bit, with the ticket system. People buy the ticket, et cetera. And what's always amazed me is there's still organizations out there on college campuses that have, development systems that do not connect necessarily to the ticket platform. And I would think that this is a no-brainer, but comes down to the data issue of not understanding that every single customer that comes through your door may or may not be the specific customer you want to reach, i.e. they may not be the development person that you're trying to reach, but they may be interconnected to 4 or 5 people that may be millionaires, or at least people of high impact gift. But the problem is you don't know that if you're a development officer, if the ticket system isn't reporting back to your development system and having that interconnected. So I really kind of, I think that's where we're going to see the trends kind of change. Ticket platforms are starting to take that seriously themselves and input a development model. You see, whether it be Ticketmaster, Spectra, et cetera, they're all trying to build within, whether talking to different languages of, different platforms that are on development side, or if they're kind of building their own kind of donor base. It all comes back to having as much information as possible. And really, I think the all-stars of the future are going to be Lee Walkowitz, who's at Spectra right now, who's worked at Cal before that, and she's going to probably be somebody that honestly, if you're a big-time organization, you're going to try to hire. Or Liz Minnie, who's at James Madison. Both of them spoke at our last conference, and the reason they spoke was because honestly, they have a lot of information to provide. Not only are they knowledgeable, but they've actually applied it, both in the donor side and the ticket side. I guess one of the things that NAATSO has also done is had a great webinar system to where, the webinars, that we've had through Spectra, the data one was one of the biggest ones, highest rated that they've ever had. In fact, probably one of the biggest they've ever had. And that comes down to a lot of people wanting to know more information about who their customers are and how it can help them long term as an organization. Because honestly, we cannot compartmentalize anymore what we do in the athletic department. We have to, think of everybody as a living part of the organism, and the organism feeds one side and the other. It does not just go tickets, and then at the other side you see development. They all kind of interfeed because they all matter to each other in order to make this thing go.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.